Hey guys, tonight we're going to drop you into the dusty boots of a World War II American soldier, from draft notice to porch-sitting survivor. Imagine this, the year is 1942, and you're pushing a rickety wheelbarrow of corn across a cracked Oklahoma field. Your palms are blistered, the wind stings your eyes with grit, and every radio in town hisses with distant, terrifying news from across the ocean. Suddenly, the postman pulls up with a white envelope. Draft notice. You knew it was coming, but still, your stomach drops like a lead helmet in water. You've just been selected to serve your country. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hitch a ride to the nearest train station with your brother's old suitcase and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Your mother pretends she isn't crying as she waves goodbye, handkerchief clutched in trembling fingers. The town is quiet, almost too quiet, except for a single crow watching from the fence post like it knows you won't be back the same. You're not the only one. By the time you reach the processing center, you're standing in line with 36 other farm boys and factory workers, most of whom look like they'd rather face a tornado than a drill sergeant. There's a dentist waiting to judge the war-worthiness of your molars, a nurse who gives you the fastest vaccination of your life, and a man with a clipboard who asks if you've ever used a rifle. You say yes, because technically, you shot at a possum once. He checks a box and sends you to the infantry queue. Bad luck. The bus to boot camp is hot, smells faintly of onions and nervous sweat, and takes you far from home. You pass a billboard that says, "Loose lips sink ships," and wonder how exactly one sinks a ship with gossip. A kid behind you is singing "Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy" badly, on loop. You consider committing your first wartime offense. Boot camp isn't here yet, but the vibe is. The moment you step off the bus, a man with lungs like a freight train starts shouting your name, somehow, even though he's never met you. You learn fast that your name now includes private and always ends with sir. You sleep on a creaky bunk surrounded by other new soldiers, some snoring, some crying softly into their rolled-up jackets. You pretend not to hear either. Your bed smells like a combination of bleach, socks, and decades of broken dreams. You start your first journal entry on the back of a cigarette carton. Your actual journal was taken to be inspected for seditious materials. You'd just written a limerick about Roosevelt's teeth, probably for the best. In the mornings, you're awakened by a bugle, which is an instrument specifically designed to make sleep illegal. You learn how to fold a shirt with such military precision that one wrinkle could get you assigned to latrine duty. And oh, the latrines. They're wooden boxes over shallow holes with splinters where no man should have splinters. The guy next to you once screamed so loud, a sergeant checked for enemy fire. Marching becomes your life. You march in the rain, in the sun, in your dreams. One boot gets a squeak, and now it's all you hear for hours. Left, right, left becomes the soundtrack of your thoughts, even while chewing. And speaking of chewing, meals are beige. Mashed mystery. Canned gravity. Once, you swear the gravy blinked. There's weapons training too. You fire a Garand rifle, and the recoil nearly dislocates your shoulder. The instructor laughs and says, "Congratulations, you just killed a pine tree." You reload, shoot again, and this time actually hit something, a target. You feel proud until the guy next to you nails 5 bullseyes in a row and casually mentions he was a county fair sharpshooter. Show off. A week in, you can name every kind of blister and know which socks are your friends. Your muscles ache, but you're learning to ignore the pain. What's harder to ignore is homesickness. It creeps in during night watch, when the world goes still and you remember your mom's biscuits or the sound of the windmill spinning outside your childhood window. One night, a guy named O'Donnell tells you about a superstition. If your helmet falls off during inspection, someone in your unit won't make it back. Yours falls. Everyone goes silent. The sergeant picks it up, hands it back, and mutters, "Maybe don't let it happen again." You sleep with it on your chest after that, like a steel teddy bear. Historically, over 10 million Americans were drafted in World War II, many from rural areas with little exposure to the outside world. You're part of that wave. A number on a list. But also a future ghost in someone's story, or a lucky returnee if the wind's in your favor. Some historians still argue whether the selective service system was truly fair in how it selected draftees. Did it favor the rich? Did it disproportionately pluck poor young men off their tractors? Nobody's really sure. But what you are sure of, standing in a field of mud doing push-ups while it rains sideways, is that no one's getting special treatment now. Your bunkmate, Sal from Brooklyn, snores like a buzzsaw and tells the same story about kissing a girl named Rita under a Coney Island roller coaster. You pretend to sleep through it. Again. But later, when you get your first letter from home and the envelope smells faintly of soap and cinnamon, you realize you miss Rita too. And you've never even met her. You wake up with your face stuck to your pillowcase. Not from drool, although there's plenty of that too, but from sheer exhaustion. Your dreams lately involve marching in endless loops, dodging imaginary bullets, and, for reasons you don't understand, your drill sergeant chasing you with a spoon. You roll off your bunk like a sack of potatoes and land hard. Another day of boot camp glory begins. They call this conditioning, which seems like a generous word for what amounts to legal torture. You run miles in boots that feel like bricks strapped to your feet. You low crawl under barbed wire while someone fires a Browning machine gun just overhead. That's supposed to be motivational. You start to believe motivation and insanity share a mailing address. At Chow, someone trades his canned fruit cocktail for cigarettes. You don't smoke, but you now own 5 cartons, which makes you weirdly powerful. Cigarettes aren't just a vice, they're currency. You could buy a whole extra meatloaf square with enough of them. You start hoarding like a Depression-era raccoon. Your assigned weapon is the M1 Garand, which you name Marge. She's heavy, awkward, and kicks harder than a mule in church. You spend hours disassembling and reassembling her blindfolded until your fingers can do it while half asleep. Which is convenient, because you are, in fact, half asleep most of the time. When Marge jams in a training drill, the instructor asks if she hates you. You whisper, "Yes," and somehow she fires perfectly after that. Drill instructors are a special breed. Yours has a voice like gravel and a face like someone made a statue out of war crimes. He doesn't yell your name, he growls it, dragging the syllables like they owe him money. But oddly, he learns things about you. The day after your limp from a twisted ankle, he reassigns you to mess duty. Not out of kindness, he says, "You're not useful unless you can stand." Close enough to compassion. You learn to make your bunk so tight a nickel could bounce off it. You don't actually own a nickel, but Sal does, and you test this theory daily. One morning, it bounces so high, it hits the ceiling fan and takes out a light. You both pretend it didn't happen and march outside like model citizens. There are hygiene inspections too. You line up like toothpaste mascots, arms out, grins fake. A guy 2 rows down gets pulled out for suspected lice. Turns out it's just dandruff. He returns victorious, holding a bottle of army-issued shampoo like it's a war trophy. You all cheer. In between drills, You learn military lingo. Snafu becomes a household word. Hurry up and wait becomes a lifestyle. And your favorite? Incoming. Because when someone yells that, it means duck first, ask questions never. You practice hitting the dirt so often you start dreaming in grass stains. The food's slightly improving. There's something called creamed chipped beef on toast, which the veterans call SOS stuff on a shingle. It's salty, mysterious, and grows on you in a worrying way. You and Sal start rating the meals like food critics. Meatloaf? 2 out of 5 forks. Mystery meat Monday? Surprisingly tender, possibly raccoon. In your downtime, you read old comics and write letters to your family. Your handwriting's gotten better, mostly because you're now terrified of anything not neat. You mention training, the mud, and a guy named Kowalski who claims to be able to sleep standing up. You don't mention crying in the latrine stall when a letter from home came 3 days late. Historians still debate whether boot camp truly prepared soldiers for the psychological toll of war. Sure, you learn to fight, clean a rifle, and eat beans with a bayonet. But nothing here explains how to unsee a dead friend, or what to do when a quiet moment feels louder than gunfire. Even now, in this structured chaos, the stillness of night makes your heart race. There's a quirky superstition going around. Everyone swears if you say, "Tomorrow's my lucky day," the next day will be cursed. You say it once as a joke, and then spend the next day on latrine duty after someone mistakes your footlocker for a raccoon nest. You don't say it again. The last week of training is hell with a syllabus. You simulate a full battlefield assault, complete with fake explosions and a guy yelling, "Medic," even though he just twisted his ankle in a gopher hole. You carry him 3 miles, and by the end, he's offering you half his cigarette stash in gratitude. You decline. You're holding out for meatloaf. Finally, the big announcement comes. You've passed. You're a soldier now. Everyone gets a small certificate, a handshake, and a stiff pat on the shoulder. The drill sergeant even says, "Not bad," which is basically an emotional breakdown in his language. You and your fellow soldiers stand in formation, sun on your faces, boots aligned. You should feel proud, and you do. But under that pride is something heavier. You're no longer pretending. Orders come through. You're bound for England. You try to act excited, but your stomach flips like flapjacks at a church breakfast. You've never been on a boat. You've never left the country. And now, you're headed for war. You pack your things, kiss your lucky penny, and shake hands with Sal, who's being sent to the Pacific instead. He promises to write. You promise not to forget him. Neither of you says goodbye. That feels too final. Your last night on base is eerily quiet. Even the bugs seem to whisper. You lie on your bunk, helmet beside you, staring at the ceiling, counting each slow breath and wondering if this strange, sweaty boot camp will someday feel like the safe part of your story. The morning you leave for England, it's still dark when the trucks rumble in. A soft fog curls over the parade ground, and everything smells like diesel, cold biscuits, and unresolved dread. You climb aboard with your duffel bag, thumping against your leg and your helmet, strapped on like it's the only thing keeping your thoughts inside your skull. There's no big ceremony, no flags waving. Just a clipboard guy yelling names, and a lot of boots climbing into open-bed trucks like cows being shipped to market. You sit next to a kid named Beasley, who has a harmonica and zero self-awareness. He plays one broken tune the entire way to the docks. You learn to hate. She'll be coming round the mountain with every fiber of your body. The troop transport ship looms out of the mist like something from a nightmare steampunk novel. Rusted gray hull, high decks stacked with lifeboats, and more rope than you knew existed outside of rodeos. It's called the USS General Mann, but you quietly rename it the USS Probably Not Coming Back. Inside, the ship is less cruise and more metallic stomach. The bunks are stacked 5 high, smell like vinegar and salt, and sway ominously even when docked. You're assigned to the middle bunk, which is just high enough to hit your head when you sit up, and just low enough to be an elbow magnet from above. You wedge your duffel beside you, hold onto your helmet like a comfort animal, and try not to think about the ocean. When the engines roar to life and the ship begins to move, you feel it in your ribs. That low, growling hum of thousands of tons deciding to defy buoyancy. You're officially crossing the Atlantic. You swallow hard. Your stomach disagrees. By hour 3, the sea gets mean. It starts with a gentle rock, then a not-so-gentle heave. Before you know it, the mess hall becomes a puke arena. Soldiers slide trays across long metal tables, and then slide themselves across the floor seconds later. Even the ship's cat, yes, there's a cat named Fritz, looks offended by the chaos. You make it to the top deck, clutching the rail like it's your last friend on Earth. Cold wind blasts your face, and spray from the waves slaps your cheeks like a very enthusiastic aunt. You throw up your last 3 meals into the sea, and for a moment, you swear you see a dolphin laugh at you. Meals become a sad joke. Stew, bread, coffee, stew again. Everything tastes like iron and anxiety. You try to keep it down, mostly because the line for the toilets is 20 men long, and full of horrifying smells and questionable puddles. One day, they serve powdered eggs that bounce. You don't ask questions. A week in, the ocean's fury settles a bit, just enough for boredom to set in. You play cards, tell lies, and trade socks like currency. Someone starts a rumor that a Nazi submarine was spotted nearby. Another guy claims he saw mermaids. Honestly, it's hard to tell which idea is scarier at this point. You do drills on the deck, lifeboat practice, fire safety, what to do when torpedoed routines. You learn to put on a life vest in 10 seconds, or the captain threatens to throw you overboard to speed things up. You wonder if he's joking. You're not sure. Every night, you climb back into your rattling bunk and try to sleep through the creaking of steel and the haunting sound of someone snoring like a dying bear. You dream of dry land, your mother's cooking, and sometimes, strangely, the smell of your dad's barn. Anything but seawater. One morning, a chaplain holds a short Sunday service on the top deck. Men gather in clumps, clutching pocket Bibles, dog tags, and silent fears. You don't consider yourself religious, but when he says, "May you walk through the valley of death and fear no evil," you feel something settle in your chest. Or maybe that's just indigestion. Here's a quirky bit for you. Some soldiers believe that if you touch the ship's bell before disembarkation, you'll get shore leave faster. You see 3 guys line up and do it, then promptly get assigned latrine duty. You take that as a cosmic no thanks. Historians still argue whether the Atlantic transport convoys were adequately protected during the war. German U-boats were a real and terrifying threat, and many ships were lost en route. You see destroyers zigzagging nearby, dropping depth charges at random intervals. The noise rattles your bones and makes your teeth hurt. You never see a submarine, but that doesn't mean it isn't watching. As England approaches, the excitement builds. Land, trees, stuff that doesn't move under your feet. You crowd the rail as the coast of Britain rises through the fog. You expect a cheer, but it's oddly quiet. Everyone's just staring, nervous, tired, quietly hoping whatever comes next is less miserable than the boat. Spoiler, it's not. Disembarkation is chaos. You get barked at by British MPs, shuffled into waiting trucks, and driven through countryside that looks like the inside of a very well-groomed postcard. Rolling green hills, stone walls, sheep who look extremely unimpressed by your existence. You nod off and wake up in a place that smells like damp wool and overboiled tea. You're now officially in Europe. Everything's quaint, wet, and slightly grumpy. But hey, you're off the boat. You survived the Atlantic. And that, my friend, already puts you ahead of a few unlucky souls. Now you just have to survive war. You wake up in a freezing, drafty barracks somewhere in the English countryside, sandwiched between two guys arguing over whether tea counts as hydration. Outside, it's grey, not just a little cloudy grey, but that deep, committed British grey that seeps into your soul and makes your socks feel damp, even when they're dry. You step outside, and the fog greets you like an old ghost. Welcome to Blighty. The training camp is technically temporary, but it's been here long enough to grow its own moss. The walls are made of corrugated tin and optimism. You're issued more gear, including a scratchy wool blanket that somehow manages to trap both heat and despair. You now own 4 pairs of socks, all of which you are repeatedly warned never to lose. Losing socks in this camp is a crime just shy of treason. Your first lesson in Anglo-American cooperation comes in the form of breakfast. A British cook serves you beans, toast, a scoop of something beige, and an egg that looks like it's been emotionally damaged. Someone asks for ketchup and is met with horrified silence. You eat the beans. You learn not to ask for ketchup again. Training continues. You practice beach landings with inflatable boats that leak, rifles that jam in the fog, and instructors who speak in clipped, exasperated English accents. You now know that brolly means umbrella, boot means car trunk, and bloody hell can be used to express surprise, anger, or appreciation, depending on tone and context. At night, you huddle around tiny potbelly stoves, drying wet socks and swapping stories. Someone swears he saw Churchill drive past in a jeep. Someone else insists that British cows moo with an accent. You don't believe either, but you want to. You befriend a local kid named Alfie, who trades you chocolate for chewing gum. He's 10, has teeth like old piano keys, and knows more about air raid drills than multiplication tables. He teaches you how to sneak into town without the MPs noticing. In return, you teach him how to say "darn tootin" with a Midwestern twang. The alliance is solid. There's a strange quiet over the camp most nights. No gunfire, no yelling, just the occasional buzz of a Spitfire overhead and the distant bark of a fox. But the tension is there. It coils in your gut, in your neck, in the way you flinch when a jeep backfires. Everyone's waiting for something. No one wants to be the first to say it. And then, one day, they say it. Orders come down. Prepare for Operation Overlord. You don't know what that means yet, but the way your sergeant's jaw tightens tells you everything. This is it, the big one. D-Day. You're issued waterproof bags, extra socks, see, they do care, and condoms, not for what you think. They're to keep your bullets dry. You laugh awkwardly. Then you realize he's serious. You spend the next hour stretching rubber over ammo like you're in a very weird craft class. You clean your rifle 3 times in one day. You write letters you may never send. You eat a meal of powdered eggs, white bread, and cold tea, and try not to think about tomorrow. Alfie gives you a pebble from the Thames. He says it's lucky. You believe him because you need to believe something. Here's a quirky fact. American soldiers in England developed a reputation for being overpaid, oversexed, and overhere. It was partly jealousy, partly truth. You're not sure about the oversexed part. So far, your romantic interactions involve awkward winks and tea shop mishaps. But you are over here, and over nervous. Historians still debate whether British-American military coordination was as smooth as later records claimed. Some say it was a marriage of equals. Others say it was more like a forced roommate situation with passive-aggressive notes left on the fridge. All you know is that the Brits like their tea hot, their beer warm, and their opinions sharp. One evening, you visit a local pub, the Drunken Parrot, where the wallpaper peels like sunburn and the ale tastes like wet toast. A man in tweed challenges you to darts. You lose spectacularly. He says, "Better luck in Normandy." You don't know whether to laugh or cry. Back at camp, you're briefed on the invasion plan. Maps, photos, timetables, Omaha Beach. Sounds nice, right? Like a beach you might build a sandcastle on. Except this one's mined, fortified, and pointed straight at Germany. You listen in silence, pencil shaking in your hand as you take notes you already regret needing. The night before the launch, everything changes. They move you to the marshalling area, long lines of trucks, quiet conversations, whispered prayers. You sleep in a tent with 12 other guys, none of whom are actually sleeping. The air smells like canvas, gun oil, and nervous sweat. You write one last letter. To your mum, probably. Or your high school sweetheart. Or maybe to no one in particular. You fold it, tuck it into your breast pocket, and hope someone finds it if things go sideways. That night, someone plays Moonlight Serenade on a harmonica, softly. You all lie there, pretending you're not terrified, pretending tomorrow's just another drill. It's not. You close your eyes. You think of home. Of Alfie's crooked grin. Of ketchup. Of socks. Of everything small and silly and safe. Then you breathe deep, press your helmet close to your chest, and try to dream of dry land. You wake up to the sound of boots crunching gravel and voices clipped with urgency. It's still dark, no stars, no moon, just a thick, cold mist that feels like it's crawling inside your uniform. You sit up slowly. Every muscle aches, but there's no time to stretch. Today isn't a drill. Today is D-Day, -1. You move in silence, gathering your gear. Helmet, rifle, webbing, extra rations, and that packet of letters you're not ready to mail. You check everything twice, then once more just to feel like you're doing something useful. Your buddy next to you is shaking so bad his canteen rattles. You pretend not to notice. They march you to the loading trucks where soldiers stand around, not talking, just breathing hard through their noses. The tension is thick enough to butter bread with. A chaplain says a few words, something about courage and sacrifice, and everyone nods solemnly, even though you can't really hear him over the pounding of your own heart. You eat your last pre-invasion meal sitting on a crate. Powdered eggs again, some toast. A cup of black coffee so strong it could polish boots. You try to make a joke about requesting room service on the beach. Someone chuckles. Mostly, everyone just chews and stares. One quirky detail you notice: someone is stuffing playing cards into his helmet. "Keeps my head lucky," he mutters. Another guy has a photo of Rita Hayworth taped to the inside of his pack. She's smiling, perfectly curled hair and all, while you're sweating bullets into your socks. Comfort comes in strange forms. You're herded toward the landing craft like cattle boarding a spaceship. Ramps clang, ropes creak, and metal groans under the weight of dozens of soldiers weighed down with gear, doubt, and way too much canned meat. You find yourself thinking back to that harmonica version of Moonlight Serenade from last night. You hum it quietly. It helps. The sea is restless, slapping against the hull like it knows something you don't. The British sailors helping ferry you to the ships shout orders with cheerfully grim efficiency. One of them calls you Yanks. You ask if that's supposed to be an insult. He says, "Only if you die slow." You're not sure what that means, but you nod politely. Boarding the invasion ship feels like déjà vu. Another grey metal stomach, another jungle of ropes and nets and stairs too narrow for comfort. You find a place to sit near a porthole. Outside, the water churns like it's trying to throw a tantrum. A seagull lands briefly on the railing, stares at you, then flies off. You think, lucky bird. You clean your rifle one last time, not because it's dirty. It's not. You just need something for your hands to do. The guy next to you is scribbling his name and blood type on the inside of his shirt. You do the same. Historians still argue whether the soldiers truly knew what they were walking into on D-Day. Official briefings were vague, morale speeches were vague, and half the maps had question marks on them. Some veterans said they felt fully prepared. Others said the ocean itself seemed more honest than their officers. You're somewhere in the middle, trained, but not ready. A command comes over the loudspeaker. Prepare for embarkation. All hands at assigned stations. Your stomach flips. You glance around at your fellow soldiers, and you realize you've seen these faces so much they've become wallpaper. You know who snores, who prays, who tells dumb jokes. Now you wonder who's going to make it back. There's an hour of nothing. Just waiting. You sit with your gear between your knees and your chin on your hands. Someone starts singing softly. "Don't sit under the apple tree." Others join in. It sounds terrible. It sounds perfect. You spend that last hour rechecking everything. Your pack, your rations, your lucky pebble from Alfie. You write a quick note and shove it in your sock, just in case. Then, a final blessing. Someone hands out cigarettes. Even if you don't smoke, you take one. Lighting it makes your hands stop shaking, even if only for a moment. As the boat lurches forward, you feel it in your knees, your ribs, your heart. This is it, the real thing. You're not heading to a training field or a new camp. You're heading into history, armed with a rifle, a rubber-wrapped clip of ammo, and the distant memory of a decent meal. In case you're wondering, yes, soldiers really did use condoms to keep ammo dry. It wasn't standard issue, but it was field-smart improvisation. GI ingenuity at its finest. You're weirdly proud of your bullet condom setup. It's ridiculous. It's oddly comforting. It's war. You keep your head down as the ship moves into formation. Around you, other transports line up like metal dominoes. Above, bombers roar past like giant birds of doom. The water churns. The sky stays gray. You find yourself whispering, "Please let the tide be in our favor." You don't know why. It just feels right. Then, quiet. Not silence exactly. Just that eerie calm before something huge. You hear waves, breathing. One guy crying, quietly, into his pack. No one says anything. Your sergeant walks by and looks at each of you in turn. No speech. No orders. Just a nod. You've never been more grateful for a single human gesture in your life. You check your watch. D-Day is almost here. But for now, you sit in the dim belly of a boat, the world shifting beneath you, the air thick with anticipation and salt. You are ready, or as ready as a person can be when facing the biggest amphibious invasion in human history. One last breath. One last thought of home. Then, the landing ramp begins to lower. The ramp drops with a groan that echoes like thunder in your skull. For a second, nothing happens, just the gray of the ocean ahead, the bobbing silhouettes of other landing crafts, the rumble of engines. Then, all at once, it's chaos. Bullets slice the air before your boots even touch sand. You jump. Or maybe you're pushed. Doesn't matter. The cold hits you like a slap from God. Salt water floods your boots and grabs at your gear. You wade forward, shoulder deep, rifle hoisted above your head, heart pounding like a jazz drum solo inside your chest. Somewhere to your left, someone's already yelling for a medic. The water pulls you down with each step, like it's trying to change your mind. Sandbags, tank traps, bodies, all jumbled in the surf. You've officially arrived at Omaha Beach, and she is not in a welcoming mood. The sound is deafening. Machine guns rat-tat-tat from concrete bunkers up the bluff. Mortar shells whistle past, landing with dull, wet thumps that send up fountains of sea and soil. You duck behind a half-submerged chunk of landing craft. It's no thicker than a closet door, but it's the only thing between you and becoming Swiss cheese. A lieutenant yells something, maybe move, or go right, or just a general scream of panic. You nod instinctively, though you have no idea what you're nodding to. Then you run. Sort of. It's more like an aggressive trudge through pudding, boots heavy, gear dragging, lungs burning. Your rifle's wet. Your socks are wet. Your soul is probably wet. You finally drop behind a sand dune, heart jackhammering, and gulp a breath so sharp it stings your throat. Around you, soldiers are shouting, firing, crawling, bleeding. One guy just lies flat and yells, "I want to go home," into the sand. Fair. You remember your training, barely. You check your weapon, adjust your helmet, dig your elbows into the gravel. Your hands are shaking so hard, you can't tell if it's cold, fear, or both. Probably both. A quirky fact for you. Some landing crafts were actually piloted by Coast Guard crews, not Navy, and their orders included, drive up to the beach, get as close as you can, then back away fast, or you're next. Not so. You make a break for the next bit of cover, a crumpled barbed wire barricade. You crawl through sand so fine it sticks to everything. Eyelashes, lips, the inside of your ears. Your canteen gets pierced by shrapnel, now leaking water into your pocket like a cruel joke. You make it to the seawall and slam into it, belly first. You're joined by two other soldiers, a guy named Conway with a face full of freckles and an attitude problem, and a terrified corporal who refuses to speak. You all stare at each other for one breath, then nod. That's enough. Above, the bunkers keep spitting fire. Some men scream, others don't. One body rolls down the beach like a rag doll. You look away so hard your neck pops. Historians still argue whether the planners underestimated German resistance at Omaha Beach. Official estimates expected moderate casualties. What actually happened? Let's just say historians now use the phrase meat grinder, and nobody corrects them. The sergeant catches up, ducking low and waving you forward. "Bangalore torpedoes," he shouts. You help uncoil a long metal tube packed with explosives, basically a dangerous spaghetti noodle. You and another guy shove it into a barbed wire gap and crawl back like squirrels on fire. Boom. A hole opens in the wire. You dash through it, chest low, ears ringing from the blast. The sand behind you fountains upward as a shell lands right where you were, not where you are. You add that to your list of miracles. You begin to move up the bluff, crawling over rocky terrain and through scrubby grass. Gunfire comes from everywhere and nowhere. You fire back, at shapes, sounds, sometimes shadows. You don't know if you hit anything. You hope. Then you hear it, covering fire. You leap forward. You and three others finally crest the ridge. Behind you, the beach is a mess of smoke, bodies, equipment, and churned earth. Ahead, a maze of trenches, bunkers, and Germans who are, annoyingly, still shooting. You dive behind a shattered log and reload. Your fingers feel numb. Your mouth tastes like metal. A young private next to you starts muttering the Lord's Prayer. You join him for a few lines. Can't hurt. Then, silence. Not full silence, but a dip. Like someone turned the volume knob just enough. You peek over your cover and see it. The nearest bunker's gone silent. No muzzle flashes. No movement. Maybe they ran. Maybe they're reloading. Maybe something awful is waiting. Doesn't matter. You go. You and your team charge, yelling, because yelling makes it feel real. You reach the bunker entrance and lob a grenade inside. It pops. You wait. Nothing. You enter. It's a small concrete room, half filled with smoke. 2 Germans lie motionless, one still holding a pack of cards. You stare too long. Conway grabs your arm. Don't. Just don't. You nod. Step back outside. Breathe. Back on the bluff, reinforcements are arriving. Radios crackle. Medics sprint past. Someone starts setting up a makeshift command post behind a burned-out jeep. The beach is no longer just a slaughter zone. It's a toehold. You realize you haven't blinked in minutes. Your eyes sting. You wipe your face and realize you're crying, or maybe just sweating salt. Your watch says it's still morning, but it feels like a lifetime has passed since the ramp dropped. Here's another strange tidbit. Soldiers later joked that Omaha Beach had 2 seasons, incoming and reload. You've now lived through both. The worst of it, for now, is over. You look around at the battered survivors, the wreckage, the slowly organizing chaos. You made it through. Not everyone did. But you did. And somehow, that has to mean something. You sit down on a rock. Just for a minute. You don't even take your helmet off. You just sit. The wind's picking up again, carrying sand and smoke and silence. You survived the landing. You survived Omaha Beach. But war. Oh, she's just getting warmed up. The hedgerows don't look like much at first. Just overgrown bushes, thick clusters of greenery lining the fields of Normandy. But 5 minutes into your first patrol, you realize these aren't quaint bits of landscaping, they're walls. Living, breathing walls of root and thorn and sudden death. You press your belly to the earth, heart pounding, as bullets crackle through the leaves above your head. You're in one of the most dangerous mazes imaginable, the bocage. It's July 1944, and you're fighting the terrain as much as the Germans. You inch forward. Every sound, rustling grass, buzzing fly, shifting dirt, feels too loud, too revealing. You've learned to fear silence just as much as noise, because silence can mean an ambush, a sniper, a tripwire. Or worse, nothing at all, until it's too late. The hedgerows tower over you, thick as small buildings and dense enough to block tank shells. Each is a puzzle. How to move forward without being seen. How to communicate without yelling. How to crawl through wet manure and not lose your mind. You make it 30 yards and end up face to face with a cow. She blinks. You blink. Neither of you is happy to be here. Someone tosses a grenade over the hedge. Boom. Dust rains down. You move fast, ducking under a broken branch and sliding into a ditch that smells suspiciously like chicken soup and fear. A guy named Morales crouches beside you, whispering, "I'm pretty sure I heard a chicken in here." You nod. Makes sense. That's the hedgerow life. Fear, foliage, and farm animals. To get through these natural fortresses, someone in your unit invents a tool, a welded steel blade bolted onto the front of a Sherman tank. It cuts through hedges like a blender. You call it a rhino. It's not standard issue, but field ingenuity like this often saves more lives than orders from above. Historians still argue whether the Allied command properly anticipated how much the hedgerows would slow you down. Some say planners relied too heavily on aerial reconnaissance photos that didn't show the true depth of the hedges. Others say command simply underestimated Mother Nature's sense of irony. You say they should have just asked a local farmer. Every skirmish in the bocage feels personal. You can't see more than 10 feet in any direction. The enemy could be on the other side of the hedge, waiting. Or they could already be inside your position. You stop trusting your shadow. You stop blinking. During a recon patrol, you spot a glint, a rifle scope. You hit the ground, heart sprinting. The sniper misses, barely. You radio it in. 10 minutes later, your squad finds the shooter, a teenager, maybe 17, with dirt on his face and terror in his eyes. He's shaking. You don't know if it's from fear or withdrawal. The war doesn't care. You sleep in barns now, in root cellars, in whatever's dry and doesn't already contain something trying to bite you. One night, a hedgehog curls up next to your boot. You name him Corporal Prickles. He disappears 2 days later, and you take it personally. Rain falls like it's on a schedule. Mud becomes a second skin. You stop trying to stay clean. You dream about soap like it's a long-lost love. You once find a small stream and try to wash your socks. They float away. You mourn them. Meals are cold K-rations, sometimes spiked with French wine, liberated from abandoned houses. You eat under hedgerows, beside ruined tractors, sitting on ammunition crates. Once, you're halfway through a can of beans when you hear the crunch of boots behind you. Rifle up, tense, just a sheep. You don't apologize. Sheep don't deserve explanations. You bond with your unit in strange ways. A shared joke about trench foot. A quiet moment watching a bird land on a broken fence post. A near-death laugh when a rooster jumps on Sergeant Klein's helmet during a night patrol. You're still laughing about that one. A quirky tidbit. Some soldiers swore hedgerow rats grew smarter, ducking during firefights, stealing rations, and even following patrols. One guy tried to train one. It didn't go well. The rat bit him and ran off with half a chocolate bar. You admire that kind of hustle. The most terrifying moment comes not during a firefight, but during a quiet advance. You're moving through a clearing, single file, sun overhead, birds singing. Then, snap. A landmine. The explosion lifts your buddy off the ground. He hits the earth screaming. You freeze, bile rising in your throat. Medics rush in. It's messy. You keep moving. Later, you find a piece of his boot stuck in a tree. You develop hedgerow habits. Tap the guy ahead with your rifle butt when you move. Whisper instead of talking. Stop every 10 steps to listen. When a twig snaps, you don't flinch, you drop. Fast. Flat. It's not paranoia if it keeps you breathing. One afternoon, you capture a farmhouse. Inside, there's a piano missing half its keys and a moldy loaf of bread. Still, it feels like a palace. You take turns sleeping in real beds for the first time in weeks. You find a mirror and barely recognize your face, sunburned, gaunt eyes like glass. That night, an artillery round hits nearby. The house shakes. Dust falls. You huddle in the cellar, breath shallow, praying the beams hold. When the shelling stops, you crawl back upstairs and find that the piano has shifted, but still plays. Someone taps out when the saints go marching in. Badly. You all hum along. By late summer, your unit finally pushes through the last of the hedgerows. You emerge into open fields, blinking at the sudden sense of space. It feels unnatural. Exposed. You realize you've been crouching for days. You survived the bocage. You survived Normandy's green hell. But part of you will always expect the bushes to shoot back. You wake up and can't feel your toes. You sit up slowly, brushing ice from your helmet and trying not to think about the snow that's crept into every fold of your clothes like a clingy ghost. Around you, the forest of Bastogne groans under a thick blanket of snow. Trees lean like weary soldiers, and the cold bites so deep it feels personal. Welcome to December 1944. Welcome to the Battle of the Bulge. You're inside a foxhole, carved from frozen mud and stubborn hope. It's barely big enough for you and Private Henderson, who hasn't stopped shaking since yesterday. You gave him your spare socks. He cried. You cried. No one talks about it. Above your head, artillery echoes like angry thunder. The trees crack and groan, occasionally dropping limbs from the sheer weight of snow and shrapnel. You call these tree bursts, shells that detonate in the treetops and send down wooden splinters sharper than bayonets. Lovely. Your fingers are wrapped in cloth. Mittens are for the lucky. You lost one glove 2 days ago while digging. You've been warming your right hand under your armpit ever since. Your trigger finger is now a negotiation between pain and movement. There's no hot food. Just frozen K-rations that you thaw under your arm or in your mouth. You bite into a chocolate bar and almost break a tooth. You try to boil snow for coffee, but the fire attracts German mortars. You opt for caffeine withdrawal and spiritual suffering instead. Every night, the sky turns bruised purple and the wind wails through the trees like a haunted harmonica. You lie awake, tucked under a damp blanket, your rifle beside you like a frozen pet. You don't sleep so much as temporarily hallucinate. A quirky truth: some soldiers, desperate for warmth, lined their boots with newspaper or stole curtain fabric from abandoned houses. One guy stuffed his socks with hay. It didn't work, but now he smells like a barn, which at least keeps the rats away. Communication lines are down more often than they're up. Radios freeze. Field phones crackle and die. Messages are sent by runners, guys sprinting through waist-deep snow, hoping not to get sniped mid-sentence. You volunteered once, never again. The worst part isn't the shelling, or the cold. It's the hunger. Every cell in your body screams for calories. You daydream about pancakes, steak, even your mom's weird beet salad. Henderson swears he once saw a German soldier eating warm soup and nearly defected on the spot. Historians still debate whether American forces were truly prepared for the Ardennes offensive. Some say it was a failure of intelligence. Others say Hitler's gamble just caught everyone with their snow pants down. You say, no one's prepared for this kind of winter. Supply lines are wrecked. The roads are iced over. Air support is grounded due to fog so thick you could butter it. You're running out of everything: ammo, dry clothes, batteries, hope. You've worn the same underwear for 11 days. You stopped caring after day 3. In a rare moment of mercy, the snow lets up and the sky clears. You stare up, blinking at the pale sun like a creature that's forgotten the concept of warmth. Then, drone overhead. Friendly. A C-47. It drops a crate. You all run. It lands in a tree. After much swearing, stick throwing, and one brave climb, you get it down. Inside, socks, Spam, cigarettes, and chocolate. It's the most beautiful box you've ever seen. Henderson cries again. You join him. You hear stories from other foxholes. One squad made a snowman with a helmet and rifle. Another guy carved a chessboard into an ammo box lid and uses shell casings as pieces. You start calling your foxhole Hotel Zero, complete with a stick door and a pinecone bell. Laughter is your last defense. On Christmas Eve, someone sings Silent Night. It's cracked and warbly, but beautiful. You hum along, watching your breath rise like steam. For one moment, no gunfire, no screams, just a quiet forest and a song. Then the shelling starts again. You lose track of days, of hours. You wake, dig, patrol, eat snow, shoot, sleep, repeat. You've stopped marking your helmet. Time doesn't pass, it piles up. At night, during a patrol, you hear movement in the trees. You freeze, rifle raised. Then, a figure. German. Also frozen. Both of you stare. He's just a kid. You're just a kid. Neither of you shoots. After 10 seconds, he vanishes. You don't tell anyone. You get trench foot, not the bad kind, but bad enough. Your toes swell, then shrivel, then go numb. A medic checks them and says, "Keep 'em dry or lose 'em." You nod. You have no dry. Then finally you hear it, the rumble of tanks, not German. Yours. Reinforcements. The 4th Armored Division has arrived. You blink hard, convinced you're hallucinating. But no, it's real. Tanks pushing through snow, soldiers yelling, the blessed smell of gasoline and chewing gum. You climb out of your hole and help them set up. Your legs shake, not from fear, but from standing. You feel like a mole emerging from the earth. The battle's not over, but the tide is turning. A famous quote you hear later. "They've got us surrounded, the poor bastards." General McAuliffe's reply to a German surrender demand. You admire the sarcasm. Sarcasm's the only thing that's kept you warm some nights. The fog clears, planes return, supplies drop, the line holds. You survived Bastogne. You barely remember how, but you did. You lost a glove, a few pounds, and most of your idealism. But you gained something too, something cold and quiet and hard to describe. The next morning, you walk past your old foxhole. You salute it, just once. It earned it. You're finally out of the cold. Not exactly warm, but dry, which feels like luxury at this point. You're billeted in a crumbling farmhouse somewhere near the German border. It smells like cabbage, dust, and faintly like horse, but there's a roof, and that's more than you had last month. You set down your pack and immediately write a letter. Not because you have anything new to say, there's only so many ways to say, alive, cold, exhausted, please send socks, but because routine is survival. The act of writing slows your thoughts, makes you feel human. You sit on a busted crate and scribble onto army-issued stationery with a pencil worn down to a nub. You tell your mum you saw a stork. You did. It flew overhead and you mistook it for a mortar at first. That you got extra rations, a chocolate bar you found under a bunk, and that your buddy Henderson still snores like a broken accordion. You don't mention the dead boy frozen in a foxhole. You don't mention the tree that exploded 20 feet away and showered you in splinters and someone's blood. You don't mention how your stomach churns every time you hear a plane engine. You keep it clean. You keep it light. Then you set the letter in a pile with others, hoping some mail jeep eventually finds it. Laundry day, if you can call it that, arrives in the form of a makeshift fire pit, a battered metal pot, and a suspicious bar of soap that smells like floor polish. You boil water, stir in your socks, and hope for the best. Then you get distracted by incoming shell fire, and, poof, up in flames go your long johns. Someone laughs. You join them. You're too tired to mourn underwear. You dry what's left of your laundry by stringing it along a length of wire in the attic. A breeze sneaks through the holes in the roof and flaps your shirt like a surrender flag. You pray no one bombs your socks. There's gossip now. Wild rumors, passed from foxhole to foxhole like contraband. Eisenhower's eating canned peaches in Paris. The war will be over by spring. The Russians are riding bears. That last one's a joke, probably. You don't believe most of it, but still, you listen. Hope lives in rumor form. A quirky little tidbit you overhear. Some soldiers try to mail themselves home. Like, literally. One guy packed himself into a crate and nearly suffocated. Another tried to hitch a ride with a mail truck, disguised as a sack of flour. Neither made it. But you admire the creativity. One afternoon, a Red Cross truck rolls into town, setting up a tent with donuts and weak coffee. The coffee tastes like sadness filtered through optimism, but it's hot, and that's a miracle. A volunteer offers you a postcard to fill out. You draw a smiley face and write, "Still not dead." She laughs. You laugh. No one corrects the grammar. Mail arrives. A bundle of envelopes, rumpled and stamped, and smelling faintly of the world you left behind. You get 3 letters, one from your mom, one from your sister, and one from someone named Becky, who claims to have met you at a church dance. You read that one twice. You don't remember Becky, but you're willing to pretend. You write back to all of them. You tell your sister her dog probably misses her. You ask your mom to send cookies, even though they'll never make it. And you tell Becky you remember her red dress and her smile, even though you're 90% sure she's confusing you with someone else. Historians still debate whether morale in late war units truly held strong, or if it simply cracked quietly and out of view. Diaries show both, soldiers laughing over soup, and soldiers sobbing into the mud. You're somewhere in between, held together with jokes, letters, and half-melted chocolate. You trade cigarettes for a comb, not because you need it, your helmet's your stylist now, but because it feels like something a normal person might do. You look in a cracked mirror and try to smile. It mostly works. You take turns keeping watch at night, staring into a forest that's too quiet, too dark. You think about home, about Becky, about Alfie, the British kid, about what you'll do when this is over. You imagine walking into a diner, ordering pie, and not needing to check the ceiling for enemy snipers. Then someone yells, "Mail call," and hands you a package. It's from your mom. Inside, a pair of socks, a tiny bag of cookies turned to dust, and a Polaroid of the family dog sitting in your favorite chair. You press the photo to your chest and close your eyes. A few days later, orders come in. Time to move. You pack up, layering on clothes that still smell like boiled soap and gunpowder. You check your rifle, your canteen, your pocket full of letters. On the way out, you see someone left a message on the attic wall. "We were here. We mattered." You touch it lightly. Then you leave. You're heading east, toward the border, toward something different. Maybe peace, maybe more chaos. You've got clean socks, a letter from a mystery girl, and a head full of fire and fog. And somehow, even after everything, you're still moving forward. You're in the back of a transport truck, knees pressed to your chest, rifle across your lap, bouncing along a muddy road that leads deeper into Germany. The war is shifting. You can feel it. The locals are quieter, the enemy more desperate. But today feels different. The truck slows, stops. A sergeant hops out, motions for everyone to dismount. "Eyes open," he says. You don't ask why. You just follow. You move down a narrow dirt path, hemmed in by dark pines, boots crunching frost and silence. The air is too still. You can smell something, burnt wood maybe, or rubber, or something you don't want to name. Ahead, there's a gate, fences, barbed wire, a guard tower with no guard. You're the first to see it, or maybe the first to understand what you're seeing. A concentration camp. You don't know the name yet. Maybe it's Buchenwald, maybe Dachau. Doesn't matter. The smell hits you first, sweet and rotting and wrong. You put your sleeve over your nose, but it doesn't help. Nothing helps. Inside the gate, it's like another world. Skeletons in striped uniforms stare at you from hollowed eyes. At first, your brain tries to fix it. Maybe prisoners of war? Maybe a hospital? But no, not this, not this. A man stumbles toward you, arms like broomsticks, mouth cracked, mumbling something in German or Yiddish or just pain. You grab your canteen, hands shaking, and lift it to his lips. He drinks like someone remembering how. You don't speak. You just kneel beside him and hold his hand. He starts to cry. You start to cry. Everyone does. You walk past wooden barracks, too small, too many bodies. You peer into one and see bunk beds stacked 5 high, crammed with the sick, the dying, the already dead. Flies hum. Eyes stare. You step back out, chest tight. There's a crematorium. You don't want to go in. You do anyway. Inside, it's ovens, ash, silence. You stare at the walls, at the soot-stained ceilings, at the floor, which looks like it's wept. Later, someone finds boxes of eyeglasses, piles of shoes, mounds of hair. You pick up a child's shoe. It's pink. The laces are still tied. You set it down and walk away. A quirky, tragic truth. Some soldiers later said they hadn't believed the rumors, thought it was Allied propaganda. And now here you are, stepping carefully between the bones of what they thought was an exaggeration. You and your unit bring what you can: food, blankets, water. You set up makeshift aid stations. Medics rush in. Army photographers arrive, taking pictures to prove this happened. You want to look away. You can't. One man clutches your uniform and mutters, "Danke." You nod. It doesn't feel earned. You showed up late to hell and brought crackers. Still, you hold his hand. Historians still debate whether the liberation of the camps changed the Allied mission. Some say it was always about defeating Hitler. Others say this became the moment when soldiers realized what they were truly fighting for. That night, you sit on a broken bench outside the wire and stare at the stars. You don't sleep. You just sit. And for the first time in months, the gunfire in your memory feels quieter. Like even your nightmares are pausing out of respect. A chaplain says a prayer at sunrise. Survivors gather. Soldiers stand stiff, unsure what to do. The chaplain's voice breaks halfway through. No one minds. One woman starts singing, her voice thin and ragged, but rising. You don't know the words. You hum along anyway. You keep moving east, past more towns, more fields, more silence. But the camp stays with you. You feel it in your bones, in your boots, in the spaces between footsteps. You don't talk about it, but it's there. A few days later, you see graffiti on a ruined wall. Never again. You stare at it for a long time. Then you add your name underneath with a piece of chalk from your pack. It feels like the right thing to do. Back at camp, your commander tells you to write it all down. The army wants records, eyewitnesses. You try. You get 3 sentences in and stop. The paper stays blank on your cot for a week. You take out Becky's letter and reread it. She asks what it's like in Europe. You can't answer that. Not anymore. You just send a new letter with 3 words. I'll tell you. Maybe one day you will. Until then, you march. Rifle slung. Helmet low. Heart heavy. But legs still moving. Because now, more than ever, it matters that you keep going. You helped liberate a camp. Berlin smells like wet concrete and old fire. You arrive in the back of another rattling truck, one more ghost in a long caravan of ghosts. The city looms ahead like a collapsed skeleton, charred, broken, but still standing in places, defiant in its ruins. Buildings are split open like dollhouses. Bathtubs hang from exposed walls. A piano rests delicately in the middle of a bombed-out street, keys missing, lids scorched, somehow untouched. This is victory? This is the capital of the Reich? You step off the truck, boots crunching on glass and ash. The sky is gray again. It always is now. Your squad moves in single file through the rubble, rifles slung but ready. You pass civilians with hollow faces and soot-stained coats. A girl pulls a cart made from a suitcase. An old man sits on a crate, feeding pigeons like it's 1936. Everyone is quiet, even the pigeons. You're here to help secure the American sector. Hold checkpoints, search buildings, keep the peace in a place where peace is a rumor. The first place you stay is a half-demolished schoolhouse. There's still a blackboard inside. Someone's written Frieden, peace, in big chalk letters. You don't erase it. You sleep under it, head on your helmet, next to a broken desk and a shattered globe. You find a radio in the rubble. It plays jazz. Real jazz. You haven't heard music in weeks, maybe months. The sound hits you like a hug. For a moment, you're back home. The war's over. You close your eyes. You smile. Then someone calls for guard duty, and the moment ends. You're stationed near Brandenburg Gate. You've seen it in pictures. Now it's scorched, half-cracked, crawling with foreign uniforms. Russians, Brits, Americans. Everyone's trying not to stare at each other too long. The Cold War hasn't started yet, but it's definitely flirting. A quirky moment, someone from your unit trades a chocolate bar to a Russian soldier for a belt buckle. Then they both sit on the steps and smoke silently, nodding. You don't share a language, but the silence speaks fluently. You help escort prisoners, some in uniform, some not. You can't always tell who's who. One man, clearly terrified, clutches a copy of Goethe and keeps repeating, Ich bin ein Lehrer. I'm a teacher. You don't know what to do with that. You let him go. Historians still argue whether post-war occupation was handled with grace or bitterness. You see both. Some soldiers share bread with German kids. Others loot silverware from shattered mansions. One guy builds a swing for a local child using rope and an old truck tire. Another guy punches a man for speaking too loudly. There's no script, only choices. You get your first hot shower in what feels like a decade. Real soap. Real water. You watch the grime swirl down the drain and wonder what else it's taking with it. You stare at your reflection in a broken mirror, older, thinner, eyes too tired. But you're still here. You tore Hitler's bunker. It's half-flooded, cold, eerily small. The walls are blank, the air smells of mold and endings. You stand in the corridor and feel nothing, just a void. A hollow where rage used to live. Later, a fellow soldier says, "We should spit on it." You think about it. Then you walk away. The city is a graveyard of ambition. Posters of the Führer peel off walls like old scabs. Swastikas lie half-buried under rubble. Children play soccer with a helmet. Life, somehow, continues. You help deliver food rations to civilians. You're told to smile. Be kind. Project Mercy. Most of them don't smile back, but a few do. One old woman grabs your hand and says, "Danke." You squeeze her hand. She reminds you of your grandmother, minus the wartime trauma. Your mail finally catches up. 3 letters. One from your mom, saying the tomatoes are coming in early. One from Becky, who says she's started writing poetry. You smile, even if you don't get it. And one from Sal, from Brooklyn. Remember him? He's still alive. In the Pacific. He writes, "I hope when this is over we both get to forget some things." You write back, "I don't know if forgetting's the point, but yeah, I hope so too." Some nights, the soldiers throw makeshift parties. They use stolen wine, scratchy records, and a phonograph someone found in a bathtub. You dance with a nurse who smells like soap and pencil shavings. You don't know her name. You don't ask. You just move in slow circles and pretend the building isn't missing 3 walls. One morning, a higher-up reads an official dispatch. The war in Europe is over. Just like that, flat and factual. No fanfare, no fireworks, just a line in the middle of a grey morning. You and the others look at each other. No one cheers. Someone nods. Someone else lights a cigarette. You sit on a pile of bricks and wonder what it actually means. You spend the next few weeks cleaning up, cataloging weapons, writing reports. You fold your uniform for the first time in forever. You think about home. But mostly, you think about what comes next. The war's over. But you're not done. None of you are. Berlin may be quiet, but something's still ringing in your ears. You walk the streets at sunset, past statues missing arms, fountains full of bricks, and children laughing in ruins. You breathe the city in, its smoke, its silence, its stubborn heartbeat. And somewhere in all of it, you feel the whisper of survival. You made it to Berlin. Not the same man who left, but a man who kept walking. The paperwork weighs more than your rifle. It's stacked on your lap in the repurposed gymnasium, where demobilization is happening in waves. Waves of men in wrinkled uniforms, holding forms, orders, tags, and faces that say, "Please, let me go home." You're one of them now. You've fought your war, crawled through hedgerows, cried in foxholes, liberated camps, and watched the sun set over Berlin's broken skyline. Now you're waiting in line. Again, a corporal with half an eyebrow and an overworked pen shuffles you forward. You answer questions like a robot. Name, serial number, unit. Do you wish to keep your uniform? You say yes. It feels like armor, even if it smells like onions and regret. Then there's the physical exam. A bored medic checks your reflexes, your eyes, your pulse, and then says, "You've got trench mouth." You blink. What does that mean? He shrugs. It's like your gums gave up. He gives you a tin of powder and moves on. You're handed a bottle of penicillin just in case. You're not sure for what. Doesn't matter. You take it like it's a souvenir. Your name gets added to a list, not the kind you used to fear. This one's a shipping manifest. It means a boat home. The words pending transport are scrawled next to it in red ink. You stare at them like they might grow wings. For now, you wait. So you gamble. A few of the guys set up a poker table in the mess hall. You throw in your last chocolate bar as a buy-in and lose it instantly. You win it back 2 hours later with a royal flush that feels divinely timed. Someone suggests you quit while you're ahead. You ignore him. You lose it all. You shrug. You help sweep floors and load boxes while you wait for orders. You reorganize a warehouse full of boots, sizes 6 to 13. You stack crates of typewriters. One afternoon, you open a box marked urgent and find it full of combs. There's a radio in the corner that plays swing music in between static. Someone requests Glenn Miller and ends up crying over a cup of bitter coffee. You give him your last cigarette. He thanks you without looking up. At night, the bunks creak with tired dreams. No one snores anymore. Everyone lies still, like the war is afraid of sudden movements. One guy talks in his sleep, always the same phrase, "They're behind us." You stop waking him. He doesn't remember anyway. A quirky fact from this phase of the war. The US Army issued pamphlets to returning soldiers titled, "Don't be a jerk." It offered helpful advice like, "Don't act like a conquering hero," "Don't get drunk and steal a cow," and "Remember, Europeans have feelings too. You find one in the latrine and read it cover to cover, twice. Some days you volunteer in the infirmary. You change bandages, carry trays, smile politely at a British nurse who calls you Yank like it's a pet name. She has sharp eyes and a soft laugh. You think about asking for her name. You don't. One night, a soldier from Minnesota plays piano in the canteen. He's good, real good. Plays something gentle, something sad. You lean back against the wall and close your eyes. You forget where you are for 3 whole minutes. You get your first haircut in weeks. The barber uses dull clippers and smells like peppermint. You stare at your reflection when he's done. You barely recognize the guy. You tell him to leave the stubble. He nods. A chaplain gives a speech on moving forward. He says you're entering the next battle, the one in your own head. Everyone shifts uncomfortably. One guy asks if there's a medal for nightmares. The chaplain doesn't answer. Historians still argue whether post-war reintegration programs were effective. Some say the army did its best. Others argue they shipped men home too fast, too broken, too unsupported. All you know is there's no briefing for how to live again. Finally, your orders come through. You stare at the paper like it's a golden ticket. There it is, typed in blocky army ink. You are hereby scheduled for transport to the United States. You fold it once, twice, then press it flat under your cot like a lucky charm. Your squad throws a see-you-later party. It involves questionable whiskey, a harmonica rendition of Take Me Home, Country Roads, which is, incidentally, not out yet, but someone swears they wrote it, and a cake made from bread, jam, and optimism. It tastes awful. You eat 2 pieces. You pack slowly, methodically, rifle cleaned, socks paired, letters bundled. You keep the pebble Alfie gave you, the pink child's shoe you shouldn't have taken, and the photo of your family dog. You leave the rest. The morning you leave, it rains lightly. You step onto the truck in a borrowed poncho and look back once. The barracks, the bunks, the piano, the broken basketball hoop someone tried to repair with shoelaces. All of it fades into the mist. You're on your way home. Almost. But first, another boat. You're back on the ocean, and you hate it just as much as the first time. This ship is bigger than the last one, but it still sways like a drunk uncle at a wedding. The corridors smell like wet rope, diesel, and men who've been wearing the same socks for several days too many. You're not seasick, yet, but you eye the nearest porthole like it's an emergency exit. They've packed the transport ship tight, bunks stacked 6 high, hammocks strung up in corners, one guy sleeping on top of a crate labeled dried beans, not for immediate consumption. You wedge yourself into your middle bunk and hope the guy above you doesn't snore like a freight train. He does. The first few days at sea are the same old misery. Line up for powdered eggs, wobble through roll call, dodge the guy who insists on singing "Anchors are we" every time he climbs a ladder. You try to read, but the boat won't stop lurching. You try to write a letter, but you lose your pencil to a sudden wave. Then the rash begins. It starts on your arm, small, itchy, like a mosquito bite with an attitude. By the next day, it's migrated to your chest, and you overhear a medic mutter, "Ship crud," under his breath. Not contagious, but annoying. He gives you a jar of ointment and says, "Try not to scratch it in your sleep." You scratch it in your sleep. Quirky fact, military ships back then were crawling with skin conditions. Not because soldiers were unhygienic, okay, maybe a little, but because hundreds of men packed together, sweating, stressing, and reusing laundry is a recipe for dermatological despair. You compare rashes with a guy from Kansas. His is winning. At least the weather's calm. No storms yet. You spend hours leaning on the railing, staring at waves that all look the same. You see a dolphin once, or maybe a chunk of wood with dreams. You try to meditate. You give up after 3 minutes. Rumors start circulating again, always do. One says the ship is headed to Boston. Another insists New York. A third guy, half serious, swears they're detouring to drop off secret alien artifacts in Greenland. You don't argue. Honestly, Greenland sounds fine. You write another letter to Becky. It's your 5th draft. The first 4 started with "Dear" and never got further. You settle on, "Hey, I might be less weird now." It's a lie. You sign it anyway. One night, a poker game breaks out in the engine room. You lose everything in the first hand, win it all back with a lucky straight, then walk away with a belt, 2 Hershey bars, and a photograph of someone's cousin in Oklahoma. You trade the belt for a clean pair of socks. The food's still barely food. Beef stew with the texture of memory foam. Bread that doubles as a doorstop. Coffee that could wake the dead or kill the living. One day you get peaches, real canned peaches, and it feels like a holiday. You share a slice with the guy next to you. He cries a little. You pretend not to notice. Every morning there's a lifeboat drill. You strap on your vest and waddle up to the deck, where someone yells instructions you've already heard 12 times. You scan the horizon for German U-boats, even though the war's over. It's just a habit now. Historians still argue whether these homebound journeys were a necessary decompression or just a floating purgatory. Some say soldiers needed time to transition. Others say they just needed dry socks and something that didn't bounce. You don't care. You just want off the boat. The best moment of the trip sneaks up on you. It's late, and you can't sleep, again. You climb to the upper deck where the air is cold and clean. Above you, the stars are so bright it hurts. The ocean glows faintly with bioluminescence. Every ripple shimmers like it's trying to say, "You're almost there." You sit alone and listen to the waves. For the first time in months, you feel something like peace. It doesn't last long, but it's something. Then, land. You don't cheer right away. You stare. Squint. Is that? Yes. A coastline. Trees. Actual buildings. You grip the railing like it might float away. The docks are chaos, officers yelling, ropes being thrown, band music in the distance playing something vaguely patriotic. You're ushered into a long line of men clutching duffels and squinting into the sunlight like vampires returning from exile. As you step off the gangplank, someone hands you a paper cup of orange juice. It's warm and weirdly pulpy. You drink it anyway. It tastes like victory and vitamins and maybe a little dish soap. There are signs. "Welcome home, soldier." "Well done, boys." You made it. You read them all without blinking. You made it. Somehow, unbelievably, you made it. But part of you stays on that ship. Part of you is still in the foxhole. Still in the hedgerows. Still standing in front of the camp gates trying to understand the world. Still floating. You board a train bound for somewhere inland. As it pulls away from the port, you watch the ship shrink into the distance. It's just a speck now. A ghost you can't decide whether to miss or forget. You lean your head against the window, feel the rhythm of the rails, and close your eyes. Next stop, home. You arrive home to a street that doesn't recognize you. The train pulls into the station with a wheeze and a screech. The platform is small, half forgotten, with chipped paint and a sleepy cat lounging under a bench. You step off, duffel in hand, boots scuffed, uniform looser on your frame. The sun's warmer than you remember. The air smells like grass and gasoline. A few people wait with signs, hugs, handshakes. A girl squeals and runs to her fiancé. A mother grabs her son's face like she's checking if it's real. You stand still for a moment, unsure where you belong. Then your brother appears. Older, somehow. His shirt's tucked in wrong, and he's holding a steaming coffee like it's a peace offering. "You look like you wrestled a tractor," he says. You smile. It's the first real smile in a while. You drive home in silence, the engine humming, your duffel rattling in the truck bed. The fields blur past, golden and slow. You notice every tree, every mailbox, every corner of the world you used to pass without looking. Your childhood dog, older now, sniffs you at the porch. He barks once, cocks his head, then walks away like he's thinking about it. You understand. You're not quite you yet either. Inside, the house smells like baking bread and old furniture. Your mother hugs you until your ribs creak. Your father says "son" and clears his throat more than he speaks. There's a banner on the wall, "Welcome home," written in your sister's loopy handwriting. You sit at the kitchen table, and there's pie. Real pie. Someone hands you a fork, and you eat like the world's ending. No rations, no metal tray, no canned anything. Just flaky crust and silence you don't need to fill. But everything's too quiet. The war doesn't follow you in uniform. It sneaks in through the cracks, creaks in the floorboard, the buzz of a fly on the screen door, the pop of the radio dial. You sit on the porch swing at dusk and stare into the cornfields, expecting artillery smoke. Instead, you see fireflies. You walk the streets the next morning, wearing civilian clothes that feel like a borrowed skin. The grocer nods politely. The barber offers a free trim. The mailman hands you 3 letters like you never left. Everything looks the same. But you've changed. You pass the school. Kids play outside, chasing each other with shrieks and laughter. One wears a helmet made from a cereal box. You flinch. Then you smile. Kind of. A neighbor calls out, "Back already?" You don't know how to answer. You say, "For now." He nods. Doesn't press. You appreciate that. You try to sleep in your old bed. The springs creak, the sheets are too clean, and the silence is loud enough to shout. You miss the sound of boots, the soft hum of bunkmates, even the grumble of a sergeant walking past. You lie awake, tracing the cracks in the ceiling, like they're coordinates. One night, you have a dream. The beach, the snow, the camp, all rolled into one. You wake up with your heart pounding and your hands clenched around the pillow like it's your rifle. You sit on the edge of the bed until morning. A quirky thing, you keep saluting people by accident. The mailman, the gas station attendant, your own reflection. Your sister laughs the first time. You don't. You try work. Odd jobs, fixing the roof, helping your father with the fence. You hammer nails with too much force. You lift with your back like you were taught not to. You feel strong and hollow at the same time. Becky writes. Says she wants to see you. You sit with the letter for an hour before answering. Sure, you write. Then you cross it out. Then you rewrite it. Yes, I'd like that. You meet at a diner. She's real, taller than you remembered. Her smile is the same. You talk. About nothing, at first. Pie flavors, the radio, the weather, then the war. Not directly, just the edges of it. She listens. Doesn't ask the questions you're not ready to answer. You appreciate that more than anything. Historians still argue whether American veterans reintegrated easily after the war. The GI Bill helped, sure. Jobs were waiting. The economy boomed. But what about the heads? The hearts? That's harder to measure. You feel like a time traveler with no map home. You start walking every day. Long walks. Down dirt roads, across train tracks, into the woods where everything smells like pine and peace. You bring your dad's old compass. You don't use it. You just like holding it. Sometimes kids follow you, wide-eyed. Were you in the war? They ask. You nod. They want stories. You tell them about the chocolate bars, the French kid who called your helmet a soup bowl, the sheep that chased your squad for a mile. You leave out the rest. You help your mum plant tomatoes. She says the soil feels different this year. You don't disagree. Everything feels different. Softer, sharper, like the world's been cracked and slowly glued back together. You still keep your boots by the bed. You still flinch at thunder. But you're home. And home, for all its strangeness, holds you gently. You sit on your porch as spring slips into summer. The air smells like fresh-cut grass and something cooking on a neighbor's grill. Somewhere down the street, a radio plays Glenn Miller's In the Mood, and someone's dog barks along like it's got rhythm. You rock slowly in your father's old wooden chair. It creaks like it remembers the war, too. The mail comes. Another letter from Sal. He made it out of the Pacific. Barely. He says he's thinking about opening a bar in Brooklyn. Calls it the Foxhole. You write back, only if I get free drinks for life. He writes, only if you tell the stories I'm too tired to tell. You agree. Quietly. Every so often, there's a parade. Flags, bands, kids on bikes with streamers. Someone hands you a pin once, says, thanks for your service. You nod. It doesn't feel like enough, but it's all they can offer. And maybe that's okay. You visit a cemetery on a Sunday morning, not Memorial Day, just a regular day. You stand in front of a headstone for a friend whose name you still say out loud when the house is too quiet. You leave a pebble. Alfie's, maybe? You're not sure anymore. But it feels right. You go to the movies and flinch at war scenes. You buy a slice of pie and feel guilty when you realize you don't have to share it. You laugh too hard at a corny joke on the radio, and the waitress looks at you like you're either crazy or very, very free. You find a job. Something simple. Fixing things. Hammers, nails, measuring twice, cutting once. It doesn't talk back. It doesn't bleed. You like that. One day you wake up and realize you didn't dream about the war. Not once. You don't know if that's good or bad, but it is something. You lie in bed a while longer, listening to birds outside. The world sounds alive. Historians still argue whether anyone really came home from World War II. Whether you ever truly shake the sand from your boots or the ghosts from your pockets. You're not sure. You think maybe you carry it quietly. Folded, pressed, stored just beneath the surface like an old uniform you can't quite throw away. You think about writing a book. Then you don't. You plant a garden instead. Tomatoes, mostly. Your mom was right. The soil does feel different now. You still wear your dog tags under your shirt. Not for the world. Just for you. One evening, Becky joins you on the porch. She brings lemonade and a stack of books. She doesn't ask if you're okay. She just sits beside you, cross-legged in the glow of a slow-setting sun. You take her hand. It's warm and real. So is she. Sometimes the wind shifts and brings you a whiff of cordite or salt water or cold metal. But mostly, it's just wind now. You survived. Not cleanly. Not perfectly. Not without loss. But you're here. And being here means something. You lean back, close your eyes, and breathe. And now, the story softens. The boots are off. The uniforms folded. The rifles locked away, collecting only dust and memory. Your porch creaks gently beneath you. The sky faded into a cool navy blue. You hear the wind nudge the leaves, the sound of a screen door yawning somewhere down the street, the faint hum of someone tuning a guitar indoors. There are no orders here, no maps, no drills, just quiet. The war is over. Not just in the newspapers, but in your body, in your breath, in the way you sleep longer now, without gripping your blanket like a weapon. You've let go, not all at once, but enough. You rock slowly in that chair, the stars pricking the sky above like forgotten names in the dark. They don't shout. They don't shine too bright. They just wait. Like you, you're home. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. So rest easy now. The world spins gently. The air is safe. The story can end, for now, with no alarms, no gunfire, no footsteps crunching gravel in the distance. Just breath. In and out. Softly. Sleep is a kindness you've earned. Good night, soldier. You made it.